Very proud to be continuing the journey with this video sponsor, Squarespace. They just re-signed for the 7th year running, making them our longest running and most supportive partner. They help me do what I do, just like their website creation tools help millions of people start new careers, build new businesses, or just get things done. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more.
Great Metroidvanias aren't hard to come by, but one that I think deserves far more attention is MIO Memories in Orbit from French studio 12/12. MIO Memories in Orbit sees you awake as MIO, a lost and powerless android born within a construct known simply as the Vessel. But the Vessel is dying. Its vital components, the spine, the eye, the hand, the breath, and the heart, have each begun to fail for reasons unknown to the Vessel's populace, so it falls on MIO to find answers within the inner workings of this once great machine. I'll avoid saying too much about the story because it's worth unraveling for yourself. In that same vein, the only footage you'll see throughout this video is from the first half of the game. What I will say though is that not since Ori have I been this moved by a Metroidvania. MIO's journey sees her cross paths with characters in denial of the Vessel's dying state, clinging to the hope that it will continue to provide as it has done in the past. Others find solace in the inevitable, free to live the rest of their days unburdened by their duty. Most of this is delivered through text bubbles and notes left behind from those who came before. There are some brief voice-acted moments, and they each feel so much more profound and impactful owing to the rarity of the spoken word. Much of that impact is owed to the soundtrack as well. MIO's soundtrack always perfectly complements every beat and every zone. It's mostly made up of this contemplative lo-fi synth that perfectly echoes the beauty and melancholy of this setting, but cranks up the BPM to get you sweating a bit for boss encounters, or pulling vocal harmonies into the mix to emphasize the grander narrative moments. Equally as memorable is MIO's visuals. It's a 3D game employing 2D techniques in its unique watercolor shading, layered beneath a sort of sketchbook line work that defines the edges of objects and crisscrosses shadows. This visual style originates from the studio's previous game, Shady Part of Me, but here they've been able to push it even further, exploring the full spectrum of color to distinguish each of the Vessel's zones, playing with degrees of definition to separate the foreground and the distant background, and I particularly love the way that surfaces seem to almost repaint and redraw themselves in response to light. The technical skill required to get these shaders and post-processing to achieve this look is really impressive, and when combined with some really imaginative environment and character designs, MIO is imbued with a visual style that really stands out amongst its contemporaries. The culmination of these sights and sounds is a world and a story that is sure to live long in my memory, pardon the pun. I'm a sucker for games that can pull on my heartstrings, that encourage me to think deeply about their subtext, and that's exactly what MIO did for me. Hitting the credits of the true ending just left me sitting in complete silence with a lump in my throat, reflecting on its themes of purpose and mortality, immediately keen to look up discussions online to read other people's findings and interpretations.
The little sapling who wished to save the sun.
You'll be pleased to know that MIO is more than just its story and its vibes. It's also a brilliantly crafted Metroidvania. Metroidvanias typically involve 3 core elements: exploration, platforming, and combat. I think MIO nails all 3 of these things, but exploration really is the focus here, so let's talk about that first. MIO will feel immediately familiar to you if you've played Metroidvanias before. You'll explore a sprawling map, gaining powers to access areas previously inaccessible. For the most part, these powers are nothing you haven't seen before, apart from one power you unlock in the late game that I won't spoil for you, but it's a complete game changer for traversal and has you looking at the environment in a whole new light. What's cool about MIO being a 3D game is that it isn't constructed in quite the same way as traditional 2D Metroidvanias. It's not made up of separate rooms divided by fades to black. It's instead this one seamless world, which really helps to immerse you and make you feel like you're exploring a real, coherent space rather than a series of levels. Furthermore, it's 3D construction is used to great effect when it comes to interactions with the camera. Moving the camera to look ahead of you isn't just a linear movement, it also rotates slightly, allowing you to peer behind objects and see the world from a different angle. And this has given the developers the ability to hide secret pathways in plain sight without the use of invisible walls. The result of all of this is that I found myself completely losing track of time, pushing at the edges of each area or wandering deep into some new location and getting completely lost in this world, but not in a way that is frustrating. The world connects logically and the map indicates pathways that are inaccessible or yet to be explored, so I was never completely stumped on where to go next. And of course, if you do decide to go off the beaten path, your efforts are often fruitful, rewarded with currency, upgrades, shortcuts, or an alternate route to a new area. MIO's traversal toolkit, combined with thoughtful level design that gestures to where you need to go while still giving you the freedom to make the journey your own, makes for, I think, some of the best exploration in the genre. Then there's the platforming and combat, which, while secondary to the exploration, are still both excellent in their own right. At a baseline, I adore how MIO controls. She's kind of got that elegant floatiness of Ori. I know some may prefer more snappiness in a game like this, but I personally am a big fan of this momentum and the fluid animations that this kind of movement allows for. One thing you'll learn quite quickly is this game really wants you to stay airborne, and thankfully that's fairly easy to do since hitting an enemy resets your jump, but your other traversal abilities each draw from a sort of energy bar. Grappling, for example, requires it to be fully charged, while gliding drains it gradually, and the only way to restore it is by either staying grounded or attacking enemies and environmental objects. This makes for some really creative platforming scenarios, where you're often asked to chain these things together, all while scanning for things to hit and thinking 2 steps ahead to ensure that you can recoup the energy you need for the next maneuver. There's certainly a familiarity to it. As I mentioned earlier, your toolkit isn't dissimilar to many other Metroidvanias, but I think this energy system adds just enough of a spin that platforming challenges feel distinct from the many other Metroidvanias with similar toolkits. Then there's the combat, which is equally tight. Sure, MIO's got a rather limited combat repertoire. She's got one basic attack chain and a dodge/block thing, but the way you're often asked to weave these things in between your many traversal abilities, particularly during boss fights, allows for a great deal of mastery and expression despite its simplicity. My only gripe is in the upgrades. This should have been an avenue to allow for a bit of customization, but unfortunately the ones that do change up your approach a bit are just kind of lacking impact. Like there's one that adds this extra slice attack if you attack during a grapple, and another that makes your next attack after a grapple do more damage. But the damage on both of those things doesn't feel nearly significant enough to justify what you're giving up for them. Otherwise, I think the combat is great. Is it the best? No, but it is fit for purpose and elevated by some really strong encounter design, and the best thing about it, no contact damage. No shade to the games that have that, but I'm not a fan of it personally. Its absence here makes every hit you take feel like it's entirely on your inability to react in time, rather than from you bumping the joystick just a touch too far. There are also very few enemy gauntlets, none of which outstay their welcome, and no bosses that summon in loads of extra mobs. I love you, Silksong, but why are you like this? That leads into the discussion on difficulty. That's something that MIO has had no small amount of contention over, and is sure to have turned more than a few people away. I've heard the claim that MIO is one of the most punishing Metroidvanias, but I think those claims are largely overblown, and mostly just a result of the game not following the conventional rules laid down by the most well-known games in this genre. There are 3 specific design decisions that I've seen people take issue with. The first is the permanent loss of currency on death. And yes, that is somewhat true. You cannot recover lost currency by running back to where you died, like in Hollow Knight for example. It is gone forever. It's definitely not as punishing as it seems though. First of all, I think this actually services the exploration, in the sense that you are now unshackled from the corpse run, and don't feel obligated to retread the same ground to pick up your lost currency and then throw yourself at the same challenge. Crucially though, you only lose the liquid currency that you get from killing things, but you will regularly come across these robots that can convert it into a solidified currency, and that isn't lost on death. You'll also pick up a lot of that solidified currency directly, more than you can spend in fact. I mean, there's only one vendor in the game, and I managed managed to completely buy out all his stock multiple times, the currency thing was really a non-issue in my experience. The second mechanic that's had a mixed reception is that during your playthrough, you may find that your max health gets permanently reduced. This happens 1 point at a time, such that by the end, you may have basically the same amount of health that you started with, regardless of your upgrades. Now again, sounds scary, but there are legitimate reasons for this that I think are a net positive overall. Its narrative link, for a start. MIO getting measurably weaker over time is, I think, such a novel way to represent the passage of time and the gradual deterioration of the vessel. And it's something that's also reflected in all other NPCs. Furthermore, it's allowed the team to very tightly calibrate the difficulty of encounters. It happens at precise moments, mostly with each step closer to the true ending, I suspect in an effort to ensure that those doing more exploration don't have a vastly easier time than those who haven't. It's reminiscent of something like Sekiro, where exploration can give you a bit of an edge or open up slightly different playstyles, but you are required to meet the game on its own terms. I assure you, the designers have balanced the game around this mechanic. Never got the impression that I was massively disadvantaged because of this. Finally, runbacks. Now this one I'm more inclined to agree with. What I will say is that none of them are particularly challenging. Like, you're very unlikely to fight a boss with less health because of them. I suppose that begs the question, what's the point then? Why not just spawn me at the boss? Well, in speaking with Polygon, one of the game's developers said it was intended to encourage exploration. Quote, "It's your invitation to go see something else," end quote. But to that I say, the game already does this a number of ways that are far less frustrating for the player, so I think MIO would be better off without them, even if they don't personally bother me that much. Where the runbacks can get particularly grueling though are in the game's toughest platforming sections, to the point that I did eventually break and have to use MIO's accessibility options, which yeah, are a thing, and there's no shame in using them. They don't deactivate trophies or achievements. And I want to briefly touch on them because I think they're an excellent example of how you can make a game more approachable without trivializing encounters or compromising the vision. There's an option called Pacifist that makes mobs only attack you if you attack them. Didn't touch this one, but I imagine it's great for making runbacks or backtracking less annoying without allowing you to skip the mandatory fights. Speaking of which, another option makes bosses slightly easier each time you die up to a limit. I think this is a way better compromise than having a traditional easy mode. It just speeds up that sense of progression, ensuring that no attempt feels wasted, but still requires you to learn all the boss's attacks and mechanics. According to that interview I mentioned, this was actually inspired by the God mode in Hades, which I think is brilliant because I know people who absolutely adore Hades, but probably wouldn't have stuck with it without that mode, and I suspect the same will be true for MIO. Finally, there's one that gives you a single regenerating pip of health when you're grounded for long enough. You can also get this as an upgrade. And this is awesome. It allows you to retry platforming sections from your last jump if you just wait a moment, rather than being sent back to the start if you run out of health. It's also a cool risk-reward mechanic for combat. Since you're often safest in the air, particularly during boss fights, this invites you to stay on the ground when you can if you want to take those extra hits. Honestly, it alleviates so many pain points without taking much away that it probably should have just been baked into the game. Even with those accessibility options though, yeah, MIO is a challenging game. But after playing 25 plus hours of this and having finished the game's true ending where the game peaks in its difficulty, I'm here to tell you that shouldn't be a concern if you're at all familiar with this genre, and certainly not enough of a problem to pass this up. I suspect why some may be particularly wary about this difficulty discussion is because it's somewhat reminiscent of the discourse around Silksong, where, you know, there are people like me who genuinely want to experience that game in its entirety because we love the art, the music, the world design, and even the challenge. But knowing that the difficulty will continue to ramp up and persist for another 60 plus hours at least makes the prospect of finishing it an incredibly daunting one. At a lean 25 hours with its subtle, unobtrusive accessibility options to fall back on if I needed them, I did not feel that way at all about MIO. And I think that's part of why MIO has resonated with me so much. This is a game that similarly delivers some absolutely delightful art and music, all in service of a story that's sure to move you in a way that few Metroidvanias do. The exploration, meanwhile, is some of the best in the genre, owing to this masterfully crafted world and clever usage of its 3D elements. And then there's the platforming and combat, which are also excellent. This studio has clearly studied all the other games that have come before it to ensure that MIO has tight controls and clever encounters that make full use of the toolkit. Importantly though, the challenge that makes games like Silksong so alluring is still present here, but in just the precise amount to get me in that flow state on occasion, and in the end have me looking back in awe of the trials I've overcome, without that challenge at any point becoming too overbearing. I truly believe that if you approach this game with an open mind and trust in the developer's decisions, you may just find yourself emerging with a new all-time favorite Metroidvania, just as I did.
It's a new year, which means it's a chance to start something new. So if there's a business idea, hobby, or project you've been wanting to kick off, maybe consider making it happen with this video sponsor, Squarespace. Because a website can be that thing that makes your idea real. A piece of virtual real estate where you can publish work you've written or photos you've taken, a place you can sell stuff you've made, a place you can book appointments with clients, a place you can build new communities. So much of it happens online, and unless you have a website that's purpose-built to deliver your goals, you're going to be going in with one hand tied behind your back. The days of having to hire an expensive team of web developers to make your website are over. With Squarespace, you can build a professional looking website in just minutes. Just start by selecting one of their templates, customize it using their intuitive tools, and then begin uploading your content, be it published articles, the inventory of stuff you're selling, your art portfolio, whatever. Squarespace websites all support e-commerce, making it easy to begin doing business, either by selling products or by organizing appointments if you're providing a service. They also support multiple payment solutions, as well as detailed analytics so you can see how customers are finding you and what they're doing when they spend time on your site. They're also ready for this next AI-enabled era, with AI-powered tools that make website design and copywriting even easier, and their SEO tools have been refreshed to ensure that your site appears in AI-powered searches and chatbot responses. There's so much more that Squarespace offers, so if you'd like to check it out for yourself, you can visit squarespace.com to try it for free. And if you want to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup to get 10% off your purchase of a website or a domain name. A big thanks to Squarespace for their 7 years of support, and a big thanks to you for watching this video.